Hi guys, welcome and welcome back to my channel. I hope you've been fine. So remember, over here we look for ways for our money to work for us, right? Because we said at the end of the year, we don't want our money and our bills to be competing like this, okay? So karibu sana. If you're new here, please make sure you subscribe so that whenever I post any financial related content, you'll be able to see it. Also follow me on other social media platforms, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram. I post all the other content that I do on a daily in those channels. Okay? Okay, karibu sana. So today we are going to be talking about bonds, all right? I remember when I was doing the money market video, I told you people that the government of Kenya raises funds in two ways, okay? The first way, which we all know too well, is taxation, all right? And then we have way number two, which is borrowing. So borrowing can either be external, which is where they borrow from like the World Bank of Kenya, all right? Or internally. And internally, we say it can either be short term, and that is where the treasury bills come in. And remember, when we were doing money markets, we said that most of the money or the bigger chunk of the money that you put in your money market funds is actually put in treasury bills, okay? And then now we have a more long-term borrowing, which is now where the bonds come in, okay? So if you're interested, nataka ushike masikio hivi and get to learn things from me, okay? Karibu. So now let's start with the basics. We already now understand what a bond is, okay? So now let's talk about the different kinds of bonds that are floated by the government, okay? So number one, we have what we call an infrastructure bond, okay, which is tax-free and which is what most people prefer. Because I mean, if something is tax-free, then it means that the return that you're getting is higher, okay, than if you are actually to be taxed, all right? And then the second kind of bond that is floated by the government of Kenya is the fixed interest bond, okay? These ones are usually taxed, what we call the withholding tax, and it usually ranges, but more often than not, it's usually 10%, okay? Together? All right. Now that we know what they are and the two kinds of bonds that are floated, one thing that you need to know is that unlike treasury bills that are floated every other week, for the bonds, they are floated every other month, okay? And when they are floated every other month, it doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be a new bond. It can be, for example, a bond that was issued in 2018, okay? And because the government is having a deficit in terms of budget and they do not have enough money to accomplish whatever it is that they are trying to accomplish, then in such an instance, they might reopen a bond to the public, all right? So for us to be able to understand what these things are, I will put here an example of a prospectus. When we talk about prospectus is when the government issues a bond, it gives a prospectus. And this is basically a document that tells you everything that you need to know about that bond. When I talk about everything, I mean, for example, it tells you the term of that bond. It could be maybe a 10-year bond. It could be a 9-year bond, a 7, basically the term of that bond, okay? The coupon rate basically is just a technical term of saying the interest rate that you're going to get, all right? So for example, if a prospectus tells you that the coupon rate is 15% or 14% even, for example, for ease of calculation, it just means that that bond gets an interest of 14% per annum, okay? But remember, when it comes to bonds, the interest is paid twice a year, okay? So that means every 6 months. That does not necessarily mean June and December. It depends with when the bond was floated, all right? So, for example, if you have 1 million and the bond coupon rate is 14%, that tells you that at the end of the year, or basically the interest that you get in 1 year is 140K, all right? But this 140K is paid 70K at the end of month 6 and the other 70K at the end of the other month, all right? So basically, that is what we are calling a coupon, okay? And then we have what we are calling time to maturity. Time to maturity is, for example, a bond could be a 10-year bond. So if it is issued today in 2026, if it is a 10-year bond, that means it will mature in 2036. When we talk of maturity, this is what we mean. Remember, you've invested 1 million. You'll be paid interest every other 6 months. And then at the end of that period, you will get back your initial investment, okay? So if you had invested 1 million, at the end of the 10 years, you get back your 1 million. But remember, you don't have to hold for the entire period. Maybe something comes up and you need to get your money back. You can always sell your bond before maturity in the secondary market. We're going to talk about what the secondary and the primary market is. But basically, that is what a bond is, okay? So if you have some idle cash, I keep saying, I have my friends, family, people who reach out to me telling me, hey, Lois, I have such and such an amount of money. What can I do? So remember, when you invest in the government, it's usually one of the safest kinds of investments because, since we gained independence, the government of Kenya has not defaulted on a single debt, okay? So not unless this will be a first time, we don't foresee that happening. So if you're one person who's like scared of risks, because remember, we keep saying the higher the risk, the higher the return. So these ones are usually lower risk, and then they also tend to have 14% it's a decent return. Let's just be honest. It's a decent return that you're not likely to get anywhere else. Okay? All right. So now we've understood what a coupon is. We've said coupon is just a technical term of telling you this is the interest that you're going to earn at the end of this particular period together. Okay. And then now let's talk about the primary market and the secondary market, because I'm sure these are terms you've had being thrown around and you're probably wondering, now what are these? I'm going to explain it to you as though I was explaining to a 6-year-old. When we say the primary market, it's basically when you buy directly from the Central Bank of Kenya. You don't use a broker. Let me use an example of potatoes. You want to buy potatoes. You have an option of going to somebody's shamba, and buying directly from them. Okay? Or you can actually decide to go to a market. Could be Kangemi, could be Githurai, whichever market where you live. Okay? And buy from a broker. You see those people who bring potatoes in buses? I don't know if you understand these things, but I know you get it. You can decide to go the primary way. So basically, the primary market is where you buy directly from the Central Bank of Kenya. And how do you buy from the Central Bank of Kenya? You just need to have a CSD account. Nowadays, things are digital, so you don't even need to struggle with paperwork and walking in and out of banks, okay? The advantage of that is if, for example, a bond is going for like 100 per value, like 100 bob, then you get it at that 100 bob, okay? And then you can decide to go through the secondary market. This is where you use your brokers. You see, the same way we have share brokers, we also have brokers. And in this case, mostly they are just banks, okay? So you can decide to go to your bank. They help you get a CSD account, and then they can also help you in buying and in selling. Secondary markets are usually useful, for example, when you want to dispose of a bond before its maturity. Okay? So Situmaelewa, we now understand what a primary market and what a secondary market is when it comes to bonds. Together? If you have any question, just feel free always to leave a comment below. I always leave my contact, so feel free to ask me any question. Okay? So I hope up to that part, we have all understood.